Most gardeners spend hundreds of dollars every spring replacing plants that were never meant to last. Flats of annuals that look beautiful in May and look exhausted by August. And here's the thing nobody at the garden center tells you. There are perennials with root systems so deep and so established that seasonal heat, drought, and neglect barely register. Plants that have been blooming for centuries without anyone replanting them. Plants that feed pollinators, ask almost nothing in return, and just keep going. Today I'm going to show you 15 of them, blooming from early summer straight to frost, some for 5 and 6 months on a single root system. Stick with me because number 8 does something no hardy perennial was supposed to be capable of, and number 15 is the plant your garden cannot end the season without. 1. Coreopsis, the tireless prairie daisy. Coreopsis has been growing in North American meadows for thousands of years, and it opens this list with one of the strongest arguments against annual flowers ever made. Indigenous peoples used it medicinally and recognized what prairie ecology had already proven. This plant does not stop. It blooms continuously from early summer until frost, producing brilliant yellow, orange, coral, and red flowers on a root system designed for drought, heat, and poor soil. Because it evolved on the open prairie, it doesn't waste resources surviving. It puts everything into flowers. The mechanism is simple. Coreopsis is a rapid, continuous bloomer. It doesn't wait for ideal conditions. Deadheading extends the season, but the plant performs even without it. Modern varieties like Moonbeam, Sunray, and the Zagreb series have refined the color range and pushed the bloom window further. Some types clock 4 to 5 months of unbroken color from a single established clump. Plant in full sun and well-drained soil. Once established, it tolerates drought that would shut most ornamentals down. Don't over-amend the soil. Rich, moist beds make it floppy and reduce flowering. Give it almost nothing and it rewards you with everything. If you're still replacing marigolds every May, Coreopsis is the conversation you need to have with yourself. 2. Salvia, the month-after-month spike. The Salvia family has a cultural and medicinal history stretching back thousands of years across Europe, the Mediterranean, and the Americas. The name comes from the Latin salvare, meaning to save, and traditional herbalists considered it among the most versatile healing plants known. The ornamental perennial salvias carry that same deep constitution into the modern garden, producing tall flower spikes in blue, purple, pink, and red that return for months through a combination of natural rebloom and simple deadheading. Here's how it works. Each salvia spike is packed with individual tubular flowers structured specifically for long-tongued pollinators. Hummingbirds, bumblebees, and butterflies work them constantly from the moment they open. When a spike finishes, cutting it back by half triggers the plant to push new basal growth and start the cycle again. With consistent management, the season extends from late spring to hard frost. Varieties like May Night, Blue Hill, and the native Salvia azura are exceptional performers. Wendy's Wish blooms almost continuously in warmer zones. Plant in full sun with good drainage and resist the urge to fertilize heavily. Salvia thrives on lean soil. Rich, over-amended beds produce lush foliage and weak flowering. It's a plant that rewards the gardener who pays attention once and then gets out of the way. 3. Coneflower, the backbone of the pollinator garden. Echinacea purpurea has one of the most well-documented ecological histories of any flowering plant in North America. Indigenous peoples of the Great Plains used it extensively as medicine and recognized it as a marker of healthy land. Where coneflowers grew abundantly, the ecosystem was functioning. That relationship between coneflower and a healthy landscape isn't nostalgia. It's biology that still holds today. What makes coneflower exceptional for a long-season garden isn't just its bloom window, which runs from midsummer deep into fall. It's what happens after the petals drop. The raised cone at the center of each flower supports a community of insects throughout the growing season. The dried seed heads remain standing through winter and feed goldfinches and other seed-eating birds for months. A single coneflower plant contributes 12 months of ecological value from one growing season. Modern breeding has dramatically expanded the color palette beyond the original purple. Deep red, orange, yellow, white, and bicolor varieties are all available now, and all carry the same toughness as the species. Magnus, Cheyenne Spirit, and White Swan are reliable, tested performers. Plant in full to part sun in well-drained soil. Once established, it spreads slowly and naturalizes, filling in year over year. It's the backbone plant of any garden that takes both beauty and ecological responsibility seriously. 4. Gaillardia fire that doesn't burn out. Gaillardia is the plant that peaks when everything else retreats. Bold, concentric rings of red, orange, yellow, and burgundy on stems that stand upright in July heat that would wilt or collapse most other ornamentals. It evolved on the North American prairie specifically for this environment: relentless sun, summer drought, poor soil, and every structural feature reflects that origin. The root system is compact but resilient. The blooms cycle rapidly, one generation giving way to the next almost without pause from early summer to frost. The practical picture is simple. Plant Gaillardia in full sun and pour to average, well-drained soil. It actively dislikes rich, moist garden beds, which cause root rot and reduce flowering. Sharp drainage is non-negotiable. Deadheading spent flowers accelerates rebloom. In the right conditions, the plant blooms continuously for 4 to 5 months with minimal intervention from the gardener. Varieties like Goblin, Arizona Sun, and Fanfare are compact, long-blooming, and widely available. Goblin in particular has shown exceptional heat performance in trials, maintaining strong flower production well into September when comparable ornamentals have already declined. Gaillardia is proof that the plants asking the least of you are often delivering the most. It's designed to thrive on adversity and performs exactly that way. 5. Russian Sage, the silver and lavender cloud. Russian sage isn't actually a sage, and it isn't from Russia. Perovskia atroplicifolia is native to the windswept steppes of Central Asia and Afghanistan, which explains everything about its constitution. It evolved in exposed, dry landscapes where only the most structurally efficient plants survive. The silver-white stems are coated in fine reflective hairs. The aromatic foliage deters deer and browsing animals. The deep root system locates water in conditions where other plants fail. What Russian sage does to a garden operates at the scale of the whole scene. From midsummer through deep autumn, it produces enormous billowing masses of lavender blue flowers on silver stems that move with every breeze. The effect is atmospheric rather than simply ornamental, a cloud of cool color that settles into the border and stays for months. It doesn't compete with other plants. It harmonizes with all of them. Plant in full sun and pour to average well-drained soil. Moist or clay-heavy soil is its primary weakness. Cut hard in spring, about 6 inches from the ground, and it returns with vigorous fresh growth every year. Little Spire and Blue Steel offer compact forms for smaller gardens. The straight species works as a large backdrop plant with few equals in late summer. If your garden needs to look designed without requiring design-level maintenance, this is the plant that makes that possible. 6. Catmint, the repeat bloomer that rewards a haircut. Nepeta has been cultivated in European herb gardens for centuries, valued by herbalists for its calming properties, and by beekeepers for the simple reason that pollinators couldn't stay away from it. A catmint planting in bloom draws bees with a reliability that earned it a permanent place in any garden meant to support them. The bloom season, managed correctly, runs from late spring to frost, 5 to 6 months of soft purple-blue flowers on a single established plant. The management technique is the difference between a plant that blooms adequately and one that blooms spectacularly. After the first major flush, shear the entire plant back by 1/3. Within 2 to 3 weeks, fresh growth pushes from the base and a second flush of bloom begins. In mild climates, a third flush before frost is common. Without this intervention, the plant produces a shorter, less generous second bloom. With it, the season extends dramatically. Walker's Low is the gold standard variety. It grows 2 to 3 feet tall and wide, blooms with extraordinary generosity, and tolerates drought, heat, and lean soil without complaint. The soft gray-green foliage with its pleasant mint fragrance deters deer and most browsing insects. Plant in full to part sun with good drainage. Catmint is the plant that makes you look like an experienced gardener for the price of one well-timed haircut per season. 7. Yarrow, the ancient workhorse of the summer border. Achillea millefolium is one of the oldest cultivated plants in recorded history. Named after Achilles, who is said to have used it to treat battlefield wounds, Yarrow has appeared in European and Asian gardens since antiquity, valued for its medicinal properties, and for the simple practical reality that it bloomed endlessly through summer heat when almost everything else struggled. It wasn't planted for novelty. It was planted because it worked, season after season, with no fuss. The structure behind Yarrow's P. Performance is its corymb flower cluster, a wide, flat-topped head made up of dozens of tiny individual flowers. This structure is one of the most accessible landing platforms for beneficial insects in the garden, and the plant produces these clusters in rapid succession through peak summer heat and well into fall. The fine, ferny foliage gives the plant an airy texture even between bloom cycles, so it reads well at every stage of the season. Modern hybrids have pushed the color range well beyond the original white. Coronation Gold, Paprika, and the Galaxy series deliver rich yellows, deep reds, and coral salmon tones with the same toughness as the species. Plant in full sun and well-drained soil. Divide every 2 to 3 years to keep it vigorous. Cut back hard in late summer for a fresh fall flush. Yarrow doesn't just survive neglect. It seems genuinely offended by excessive attention. Give it almost nothing, and it repays you for months. 8. Hardy Geranium Rozanne, 6 months of unbroken color. This is the entry that earns its number. Rozanne is a hybrid hardy geranium introduced in 2000 that changed what gardeners believed a perennial was capable of doing. Where most hardy geraniums deliver a bloom window of 6 to 8 weeks, Rozanne documented something different. Continuous bloom from late May to hard frost. Not a rebloom. Not a second flush. Unbroken, continuous flowering for up to 6 months on the same root system. The biology behind this is a uniquely extended juvenile flowering phase. Most geraniums shift resources toward seed set as the season progresses, which is why bloom stops. Rozanne keeps cycling back to vegetative and flowering growth throughout the entire season. It trails and spreads to fill 2 to 3 feet of ground, producing violet-blue flowers with a distinctive white center at extraordinary volume the whole time. In trials conducted by the Royal Horticultural Society and the Perennial Plant Association, it received the highest long-season performance ratings of any hardy geranium in recorded cultivation. Plant in full sun to partial shade in average well-drained soil, tolerant of heat and moderate drought once established, spreads gently without becoming invasive. If you grow one plant from this entire list, make it this one. A single Rozanne clump will deliver more season-long color than 3 beds of well-maintained annuals at a fraction of the cost and 0 replanting required. 9. Black-eyed Susan, the golden backbone of late summer. Rudbeckia fulgida has been lighting up North American meadows for millennia, and its position in the late-season garden calendar remains as critical today as it was ecologically before garden centers existed. Black-eyed Susan blooms at the precise moment the summer garden needs it most. When the heat peaks, the early season performers have faded, and pollinators dependent on late summer nectar are most vulnerable. It fills that gap with extraordinary golden yellow flowers around dark brown centers, and it does so for months. Ecological value is specific. Rudbeckia supports butterflies, native bees, and goldfinches simultaneously, the goldfinches feeding on the seed heads as they mature through autumn. The plant earns its garden real estate at every stage of its cycle. Rudbeckia fulgida goldsturm remains one of the most awarded and most planted perennials in the world. Newer selections like American Gold Rush offer improved powdery mildew resistance and a bloom season that extends reliably into October. Plant in full to part sun in average to moist, well-drained soil. Black-eyed Susan tolerates clay better than most perennials and spreads gradually over years to form dense, low-maintenance colonies. Cut back in late fall or leave the seed head standing for winter bird interest. This is the plant that makes September look like July when the rest of the border has started its decline. That reliability is worth more than anything novel. 10. Bee Balm, the living hummingbird feeder. Monarda didyma is native to eastern North America and has one of the richest human relationships of any plant on this list. Indigenous peoples, particularly the Oswego of New York, brewed it as a tea and introduced it to European settlers who adopted it after the Boston Tea Party made imported tea politically untenable. And while humans were discovering its value, pollinators had already known for millennia what the flower architecture made obvious. This plant is built to feed them. The shaggy, spidery flower heads of bee balm are architecturally perfect for long-tongued pollinators. Hummingbirds, bumblebees, and swallowtail butterflies work them constantly during the main flush in July and August. The blooms arrive in vibrant red, pink, purple, and white. With cutting back after peak bloom, Rebloom extends into September. Plant near a window and you will watch hummingbirds in real time, reliably, from inside your house. Powdery mildew has historically been a weakness of the species, but modern varieties like Jacob Klein, Raspberry Wine, and the Be Happy series have dramatically improved resistance. Plant in full to part sun in moist, rich soil. Bee balm is one perennial that genuinely benefits from a well-amended bed. It spreads by underground runners, forming expanding colonies year over year. It's the plant that brings the living garden to your door in the most literal sense. 11. Daylily, Reblooming varieties. The democratization of the perennial border. Hemerocallis has been cultivated in Asia for over 3,000 years, used medicinally, eaten as food, and grown ornamentally with equal enthusiasm. The name translates to beautiful for a day, because each individual flower lasts only 24 hours. But an established clump produces dozens of buds on each scape, and the reblooming varieties that transformed this genus produce multiple scapes across the entire season, beginning in early summer and continuing to frost. Stella d'Oro was the breakthrough. A compact golden yellow daylily that blooms, rests briefly, and reblooms repeatedly through fall. It became one of the top-selling perennials in the world because it does exactly what it promises. Newer reboomers, Happy Returns, Ruby Stella, and Rosy Returns, have expanded the color range and improved rebloom frequency further. The key to maximizing rebloom is removing spent scapes at the base as soon as they finish, redirecting the plant's energy from seed production into pushing new flower stalks. Plant in full sun to light shade in average to moderately fertile, well-drained soil. Daylilies are famously adaptable. Divide every 4 to 5 years when the center of the clump begins to die out. Few perennials match daylilies for accessibility, tolerance, and season-long performance when the right varieties are chosen. Stella d'Oro alone did more to make perennial gardening approachable for ordinary people than almost anything else in the 20th century. 12. Scabiosa, the quiet overachiever. Pincushion flower proves that long-season performance doesn't require bold colors or dramatic architecture. Scabiosa caucasica and Scabiosa columbaria have been garden favorites in Europe since the 17th century, grown in cottage gardens primarily because bees and butterflies couldn't stay away from them. The flowers are lacy, soft, and delicate, lavender, blue, white, and pink, and they last surprisingly well as cut flowers, which contributed to their centuries of cultivation. The pollinator relationship is the practical case for growing Scabiosa. The flowers are structured specifically to support smaller bees and butterflies, providing accessible nectar through a season that runs from late spring to frost with consistent deadheading. While flashier competitors make bigger promises and keep shorter ones, Scabiosa produces a constant succession of bloom that serves pollinators when other sources have come and gone. Butterfly blue and pink mist are the compact varieties that transformed Scabiosa's presence in modern gardens. Both are floriferous, long-blooming, and easy. Plant in full sun with excellent drainage and alkaline to neutral soil. Scabiosa dislikes wet winters more than cold ones. Sharp drainage is the non-negotiable. Deadhead diligently, and the plant performs diligently in return. The most reliable thing in the garden is sometimes the quietest one. 13. Sedum Autumn Joy, the bridge to winter. Most perennials are winding down in September. Sedum is just getting started. Hylolephium herbstfreud, sold under the name Autumn Joy, produces its flowers in late summer at precisely the moment the rest of the border needs reinforcement. The large, flat flower heads open in dusty rows and deepen through pink to copper red as the season progresses. Then, uniquely, the dried seed heads maintain structural beauty through winter, providing habitat and visual interest from August through January if left standing. What makes sedum exceptional is the three-stage contribution it makes across the season. First, attractive blue-green foliage from spring onward. Then broccoli-like bud structures in late summer that are already ornamentally interesting before they open. Then full bloom from August through October, feeding late-season bees and butterflies. Then the copper seed heads that hold their form through winter. No other common perennial provides that complete a sequence of value across that many months. Plant in full sun with well-drained to dry soil. Sedum evolved in rocky, exposed habitats and performs poorly in rich, moist beds growing floppy and falling open. Give it the exposure and lean soil it prefers. Autumn Joy is naturally compact and self-supporting. Without sedum, September is where the color story ends. With it, the story continues into a quieter, more structural chapter, but still beautiful. 14. Japanese Anemone, elegance in the closing act. Japanese Anemone does something almost no other perennial manages. It blooms abundantly in the weeks when the rest of the garden is conceding the season is over. The common name is a historical confusion. Anemone times hybrida originated in China, where it has been cultivated since antiquity. It arrived in European gardens in the mid-19th century and became immediately beloved for exactly what it still delivers today: graceful, generous flowering in late summer and fall when almost nothing else will. The flowers arrive in August, building through September into October. Single or semi-double blooms in white or soft pink, held on tall, wiry stems that tremble in any breeze. The effect is airy and animated, entirely out of season in the best possible way. The foliage is attractive from spring onward, providing ground cover through the whole season before the flowers even arrive. Honorine Jobert white, September charm pink, and Pamina rose pink double are all excellent and widely tested. Japanese anemone thrives in partial shade to full sun with moist, rich, well-drained soil. It can spread by underground runners once established, a virtue in large spaces, something to manage in small ones. It can be slow to settle in and resense being moved once planted, but after 2 or 3 years a mature clump becomes one of the most beautiful things a fall garden offers. Tall, swaying, luminous, and entirely unbothered by the fact that everything around it is retreating. 15. Calico Aster, the final flourish. Symphyiotrichum lateriflorum earns the final spot on this list because it represents the principle that every plant here has demonstrated. It blooms when the season is supposed to be over. It asks nothing, and it gives everything it has at the exact moment the ecosystem needs it most. From late summer until hard frost, Calico Aster erupts into a cloud of tiny white flowers with pink to purple centers. A single mature plant produces thousands of individual flowers and covers itself so densely that stems and foliage nearly disappear beneath the bloom. No deadheading required. No amended soil. No irrigation once established. It opens in August and doesn't stop until the frost takes it in November. But the ecological story is what makes Calico Aster truly remarkable. It blooms in late September and October, when most flowers are finished and migratory pollinators are searching for fuel before winter. Bees, butterflies, monarchs, and dozens of specialist native bee species depend on it as a late-season lifeline. Traditional ecological knowledge across indigenous cultures of eastern North America recognized native asters not as weeds, but as critical contributors to the web of life that made the following spring possible. That knowledge is fully supported by modern entomological research. Plant in full sun to part shade in average to poor, well-drained soil. Let it grow. And at the end of October, when the frost finally takes it and the season closes, understand that it gave everything it had, and that somewhere, because of it, a pollinator is better equipped to survive the winter. That's 15 plants that bloom from June to frost, come back stronger every year and ask almost nothing in return. A garden built on perennials like these isn't just easier to maintain, it's more honest. It works with the land instead of against it. The roots go deeper, the pollinators return, and the results compound year after year. The most generous things in a garden are rarely the ones demanding the most from you. Drop a comment below, which one are you planting first? And if this helped you rethink what your garden can do, hit subscribe. We put out new videos every week.